Welcome to NYNJPA Weather. I'm meteorologist Stephen DiMartino, here to take you through all the wacky weather that impacts the New York City and Philadelphia metropolitan areas. So let's see what's going on out there. Well, this is part 2 of today's video of NYNJPA Weather. This is for later on in the week. This is 500 millibars on Thursday night on the GFS. And basically I'm going to take you from Thursday night through Saturday night on the GFS and the European. Now what we have right here is basically the negative NAO blocking scheme that we've been waiting for all winter. We have a strong 50-50 low that's setting up over eastern Quebec, and it's really a trough out in 50-50, but you have your closed low around eastern Quebec. You have your strong ridge over Greenland, and you have strong confluence, which I have circled here, over the Great Lakes and over towards southeastern Ontario and southwestern Quebec. And that would support strong high pressure about 1030 or greater, developing over that location, which would allow cold air damming to develop. Meanwhile, look to our south, and the southern stream has a very impressive trough and strong PVA driving through the Gulf Coast. Now, the same time period on the European guidance shows basically the same thing. The disturbance is a little bit slower. Notice that it has a positively tilted trough, whereas the GFS is more neutral. But we see the same thing as what the GFS was showing during this time period. Strong confluence and convergence over the Great Lakes and southern Canada, and a strong 50-50 low and a 50-50 trough, should I say, and upper level low over northeastern and eastern Quebec, and of course our strong ridge over Canada. Now again, this would strongly indicate a strong high pressure system in the favorable area to produce winter weather and support winter weather over the coastal plain, as we have strong cading impacts developing along the coast. As we move towards Friday night, the GFS is a little bit more progressive, a little bit faster with this disturbance. It's driving through the Ohio Valley. Notice that the block is still present. It breaks down a little bit over Greenland. It kind of separates into two distinct cells of higher pressure, but you still have your convergence and confluence basically right over Maine and parts of southeastern Quebec, which means that you still have your high pressure center centered somewhere around northern Maine, which would support a northeasterly to east-northeasterly flow over the coastal plain, which means you still have your cold air damming being supported. Meanwhile, you have your low pressure system driving up towards the Ohio Valley and eventually transferring towards the coast. The European model guidance flow is a little bit slower. It has a negatively tilted trough over the Gulf Coast. Actually, this is a lot slower as far as the 500 millibar development, and that means that our low pressure system is not only further south, but would also be forced further east. You still have your strong convergence and confluences developing over the eastern Great Lakes, and basically this high pressure center should be centered somewhere around northern New York, based on the 500 millibar guidance that we're seeing here. You still have a very well defined ridge over Greenland, a very well defined upper level low over eastern Canada, and that combined will support again a strong high pressure center to the north of the forecast area, which in turn supports strong cold air damming. As we head on to the European towards Saturday night, again, what we still have, we have a slower solution on the European guidance, and because of that you have your high pressure centers centered somewhere around northern Maine. You still have your cold air damming, and you have a strong indication of a negatively tilted trough sitting on the east coast with a surface low pressure center off of the east coast. However, in this depiction, again, the precipitation would change over to rain because it takes too long for the coastal low to take over. Here is basically a drawing of track 1 being the GFS, track 2 being the European, and track 3 being my own little hypothesis on how this storm may develop. All model guidance agrees that we're going to have a strong high pressure center develop and strengthen and move from the central Great Lakes to somewhere north of Maine between Thursday night and Friday night. That means that there is an agreement that there will be a north to northeasterly component from 950 millibars down to the surface, supporting cold air damming over the coastal plain from basically the Hudson Valley on down through the Delmarva Peninsula at the very least. This isn't a weak high pressure, it's a strong one, and one that's not going to give away very easily. Meanwhile, we have our Gulf low. All model guidance agrees that this low pressure center will develop somewhere over southeastern Texas, track along the Gulf Coast. There's probably going to be some issues with severe weather over the southeast. However, the question is, as this storm moves up into the Ohio Valley and runs right into that whole 500 millibar block and that strong high pressure center at the surface, when does redevelopment actually occur? The GFS suggests somewhere by the time it reaches around Cincinnati, and then it gradually weakens as the low pressure center finally gets up towards around the southeastern suburbs of Cleveland, and then the low redevelops somewhere around southern New Jersey and takes control somewhere southeast of Long Island, and therefore the coastal section is basically see rain. The European guidance, again because the trough is slower and the whole development is slower, takes the storm similarly up towards the Ohio Valley, except redevelopment begins to develop over West Virginia, and then the low starts to develop and take shape east of New Jersey, and then it takes hold once it moves to the south of Long Island, and then what you have is a strong coastal storm somewhere off Cape Hatteras, off of the Cape around Boston, and therefore you get your snow developing again over parts of interior New England, possibly parts of southern New England. Again, mostly rain for the coastal sections. And then there's my suggestion of a possible storm track because of the blocking that sets up, and that is that the low pressure center tracks again through the southeast, severe weather, whatnot, and then as it reaches Virginia, then redevelopment starts to develop because it's starting to feel the impact of all the subsidence and convergence and confluence that's developing at the upper levels, and then therefore supported down at the surface. So the low pressure center will not want to run into an area of greatest resistance. It will try to find the least resistance, which will be towards the coast and somewhere off the Virginia or North Carolina coast, and then track northeast, which would mean a much wider and colder scenario for the coastal plain. At this point, this far out, either one is possible. Regardless of the storm tracks, because of the cold air damming that's supported on all model guidance, precipitation will likely start off as snow for this system and have a gradual changeover to some sort of sleet, snow, and finally rain mess along the east coast based on either the GFS or European track, which would happen on Friday night into most of Friday actually on through Saturday morning. So isotropic lifting will be an issue with this storm. Thereafter, Friday night into Saturday, that's when things really get interesting, and we'll have to watch the redevelopment of this storm. That's it for today. I'll keep on watching the storm. Have a good day.